All right, Scott. Hey, man, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm excited to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. It's good to be here.
Well, I appreciate it. We've got a mutual friend in Casey, and I'm glad she introduced us.
Yes.
I love having high caliber individuals like you on the podcast, and I'm really excited for our listeners. I'm going to have Scott introduce himself, but um, the focus of this podcast is investing. And yes, I do real estate investing. Scott does as well. But today, I think we're going to be treated with a number of different views, um, lessons learned, different things from a broader perspective. Because Scott, you not only do real estate, but you've invested in businesses and multiple other things for quite a while. And so tell our
Yeah,
listeners a little bit about what you do and what you've done.
sure. Well, I've been in the financial services industry for about 30 years, Sam. And back in the 90s, I remember a client coming in who was a builder developer, and he was talking about, hey, can you help me find money? Well, no, I can't do that. I can't go out and help you find money, but what are you doing? And it was interesting to me. And so I remember getting permission from Merrill Lynch at the time for my wife and I to invest alongside in real estate and a real estate development here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So from real estate to helping start other businesses, I've worked for Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Wachovia Securities, Raymond James, and then about 7 years ago, opened my own financial services firm. And it's just, I think it's the greatest industry in the country. So I'm not biased, though, by any
Sure, sure.
means.
Well, and I think what you and I and a number of people have common is you really enjoy helping people make good decisions
Yes.
and building their portfolio. And there's principles that are the same, whether it's real estate or the stock market or whatever it is. You can be a conservative, well-educated investor. And a minute ago, we were talking about maybe we'll just hit on this right away since we're on the topic, but staying in your lane. And China's got some issues with a real estate fund crashing and
Yes.
investors from all over the world suffering from that. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. I mean, think about that. Imagine if you were or are an American investor, and if you have money in real estate in China and are facing losing it all.
Mm-hmm.
Yet you're sitting here in the US in the hottest real estate market I've seen in my lifetime. How how disturbing would that be? And so
Yeah.
one of the things is when you're sitting in the middle of a country or an economy, more particular, a sector, specifically with you guys, real estate, that you're very comfortable with, why go get into another country, even a country that has adversarial political climate,
Right.
when you have great opportunities right here within your own borders? So it really does come back to that simple: stay with what you know. When you're comfortable with something, many times we work with business owners and their best investment is themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's tried and true.
Well, and that's what I like is I like proven systems. I really like being conservative and I like low risk. And so, I actually have a consultation with a good friend of mine tomorrow, just spending 15 minutes with him for free. I'm not trying to sell him anything. He may or may not invest with us, but he said, hey, I'm looking at this fourplex in Cleveland. Can you help me analyze it? And I know Cleveland well. And he sent me the address and he sent me the numbers and he said, I think I'm going to buy it. So this is on a smaller scale, but a really good example of stick with what you know, because I happen to know the neighborhood he wants to invest in, and you have to carry a gun to collect rent in that in that neighborhood.
Mm,
It's scary. It's a scary,
it is
scary
tough.
neighborhood, and we've passed up deals in that neighborhood that looked good on paper.
Mm,
So talking about China or whatever people are investing in, you really need to educate yourself, but then really have some type of track record you can lean on, some predictability, to not lose big. And I think people
yeah.
get so obsessed with these high returns. And I often tell
Yes.
investors, if you're looking for grand slam home runs, ridiculous out of the park returns, we're probably not the group for you.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's important for people to remember is
Yeah.
that you just can't get greedy.
Well, it's the difference between gambling and investing.
Right.
Right? I mean, investing is making a reasonable return over time. Over time, you said something earlier. You're conservative. I've had people say, "Hey, I'm a conservative long-term investor." I said, "Okay, well, what does that mean to you?" Well, that means I'd like to double my money by the end of the week. Well, that's
Yep.
not a conservative or long term. But I use that ridiculous example as words matter. And
Hmm.
so, what you may think is conservative, someone else may think is aggressive. But when you go back to the return, how much do you need to make to have to go collect rent with a gun? All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And what is a reasonable return? And then lastly, is return of your money is just as important as return on your money.
Right.
So
If you
yeah,
don't get your
stick
money
with what you
back,
know.
there's an issue.
That's number one.
Yeah.
And even in business, when you start to develop a portfolio of investments and you start to look at diversification among asset classes, among markets, and among industry, a reasonable return should be the bare minimum. I mean,
Hmm.
a good return on your money should be the bare minimum. The next question should be, how does it align with what I'm already doing?
Hmm.
Does it add value or increase my visibility to potentially exponentially help me on another deal?
Hmm.
Does it bring credibility to me in a marketplace? Am I gaining recognition for my knowledge within a marketplace? Or am I just chasing returns? So a good return should be the starting point. And then
Hmm.
how does it exponentially help me? How does it help other businesses I'm doing? And does it really align with who I am and how I like to do business as well?
Absolutely. And I love your motto, aligning wealth with purpose. I read that on your website and your bio. And I think that's really important because again, people get too stuck on the dollars and cents. And
Yeah.
the purpose of an investment isn't just to make money. It's to build a portfolio and to achieve goals.
Yeah.
And one of our goals as an investment group is to also provide good housing for people. So we're not
Yes.
just buying these housing developments and nickeling and diming the property manager and nickeling and diming the tenants. We actually want the tenants to feel like they're living in a better environment than when we bought it, with
There you
nicer
go.
amenities. And that's
Yeah.
one of our purposes.
Absolutely. We call that kind of a business 360 model,
Mhm.
that everyone involved in the transaction, from the buyer to the seller to the tenant in this situation, can all celebrate what the product is. You all are gaining from one of the money management firms we use out of Boston.
Mhm.
Their firm's posture is, we invest in companies that make the world rejoice. I
Mhm.
mean, what a beautiful
Nice.
thought. So when we talk about aligning wealth with purpose, it really hits our new clients in two ways. Number one, we have to get to know them well enough to know their purpose. So that's an investment. That's an investment on our part and their part.
Right.
So it builds trust and relationship. And then second, because so many of us and so many people in our country have been busy throughout their life earning, they may not know their purpose today. And
Mhm.
so now we go even deeper. We actually have had tears shed in the conference room around what pierces the heart of our client. Because this
Nice.
money, why wait and give it away to someone or somebody when you pass away? What can you do now
Wow.
to fulfill how you feel God has made you? What is your purpose? What pierces your heart? That's kind of the way I say it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And most I feel investors are really focused on dollars and cents. And um yeah, I think that's huge.
And that can come back and bite you, like you just said. If you're
Yeah.
looking at, and we all need to admit, pro formas are as just as good as numbers on a piece of paper, right?
Yep.
It's the execution of a pro forma. It is, we find that the values of a company we invest in matter.
Mhm.
Values matter. And in today's world, we are working hard to help our clients keep more. So keep more what? Keep more of their wealth, keep
Mhm.
more of their returns, keep more of their income. Because we're living in a time where it seems like everyone's trying to take, and you end up with less if you're not careful.
Yep.
So the return, so how much you make and how much you keep is very important.
I love it. And you mentioned the company values. I tell the story all the time, and it's really important to me that my investors understand it and my partners understand it. But in 2018, I left a company where I was making for myself a fantastic income, more than I had ever made. And I was very unhappy because there was no company values. And in fact, the reason I left is because I had to choose to have execute my fiduciary duty with my clients and be honest and be a good person, frankly, or do what the company was asking me to do. And it was a very negative, unfortunate situation. The investors were not keeping as much as they should have kept. They were not being put in the best situation. And I made that decision to never work with anyone where, as long as I did, I knew I needed to leave, but I waited to leave. And so now if there's anybody that even skirts the gray area, we don't work with them. If there's anything that's even a little bit gray or a little bit leaning towards not being conservative or not what's not best for our clients. And you also have to be a good, fun person to work with. So we don't put up with people that aren't aligned with what we're thinking as far as integrity and just doing the right thing and having fun doing it. Frankly, is you got to have fun in this business as well. If everyone has integrity, it's a lot more fun.
Well, you really touch on something that kind of reminds me of even your title, which is recession proof real estate. Or I go back to 2005, 6, and 7 in the real estate markets. As a financial advisor, I had the privilege of meeting with Jeremy Grantham, and he was talking in May of 2005 that over 80% of all mortgages were interest only or negatively amortized.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember him saying, it was a group of about 50 of us at Goldman Sachs. And he said, listen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying we're at the top. I'm not saying where the top is, because no one knows where the top is. What I'm telling you is the month after the top, this will become the most illiquid asset you've ever seen in your adult life.
Wow.
And Sam, I remember he sat down on his stool as the keynote speaker and stopped talking. And then back then I was on my BlackBerry texting my team, okay, we need to be getting out of real estate. We got to start because it can be an illiquid asset anyway. And so it goes back to values. If everyone is starting to milk an asset for every ounce they can get out of it, and everyone starts to believe it's all about the Benjamins and we're going to just take real estate to the moon, you have to step back and say, okay, I know that's not a fair price.
Yep.
How much is enough for me to make? And when am I willing to take money off the table and miss? And this is a tough thing. To miss more money on the table. I mean, think about it. How many of us have sold a piece of real estate or a stock and looked at it 6 months later and calculated how much we would have made had we not sold?
Right.
Well, if we have values around fair dealings, and then if we have a level of what are my parameters to get in and out of a deal, I believe you have a clearer picture of the markets, and you'll take a more pragmatic approach to values, deals, acquisitions, and sales. And I think that helps you become recession proof because you're not going to get blinded by the dollars. You're going to be looking at fundamental values around the transaction. And that paid off for us as a financial services firm. And my wife and I personally, we sold our primary residence on the ocean here, second row on the ocean in Myrtle Beach, the first business day of 2006.
Wow.
And practice what we preach. We were getting out of an asset class. So what do we learn and how do we apply it today? So those values matter, your principles matter, and how you look at a transaction matters.
I love that. And, we have unwavering, what we call our underwriting principles, where if the deal doesn't match those numbers, we don't buy it no matter what, even though people's projections may be up here. They may be so much better. And so we're losing a lot of investors, frankly, and deals to these other syndicators, fund managers who are banking on the market staying as hot as it is. And we simply don't ever bank on that. So I'm curious, you mentioned some underwriting principles or having a more pragmatic approach based on what you learned in 2005, 6, 7. How are you guys approaching things today? Because again, we don't know if we're at the top of the market. I know it's crazy hot. I know we're not doing a lot of deals because we're nervous about how hot it is and how up high it can go or low it can go. So kind of explain maybe some principles you guys are implementing now and how you're approaching things.
Yeah, so it's really important. What I'm about to say is educational, right? If you don't have a trusted financial advisor, and more important, a fiduciary, not a salesperson, but a fiduciary, go meet with find a trusted fiduciary who's a financial advisor. But it's kind of some lessons learned, and what are we looking at now is, I think we all could be real honest. We've called this the Great Migration that's going on in the US. And what's fueling the Great Migration isn't as important as where are the dollars coming from that the people are buying these homes where the market's hot. Because I think we could go find some parts of the country where the market values are going down. And so, for example, in 05 and 06, I was telling our team, for the most part, the baby boomers were driving the market move in Nevada, Arizona, the Carolinas, and Florida, because they actually had been spun into a frenzy that they thought, if I don't go buy my retirement home now, there will be none left when we get there. It was a feeding frenzy, lotteries, and it was crazy what was going on. Well, today, you have people leaving parts of the country and they put their house up for sale, and then they get 4 offers over the asking price, and then they move to their final destination and put cash in their pocket and get a nicer home. That's what. So I think we all need to watch and look, when do those sellers put their home on the market and 4 offers don't come, and then it sits there a week, and then it sells. That's a shot across the bow. And then we start to see the markets that they're leaving, put their house up, no offers come in, and they start to have to cut prices. I think that's personal. I think that will be the beginning of the end of the Great Migration. And when the music stops, we have to be very careful that we're not leveraged, that we haven't gone outside of our comfort zone, and that we're willing to live through the historical 13 to 15 year real estate cycle from peak to trough, or trough to trough. So peak to peak or trough to trough. And think about it, the peak was really late 05, early 06. And here we are 15 years later at another peak. So we're getting a little long in the tooth, and that's the pragmatic part, right? It's while history may not repeat itself, it certainly rhymes. And once you get caught on the other side of a joint and several guarantee and the real estate's now worth less than you owe on it, that's the most painful education. So for your young followers, please learn from the old guy who has been on the wrong side personally of a real estate turn in the crash of 2000 and then the crisis of 9/11. That was very bad.
And
that was my education.
That was your education, and everyone needs one. And the purpose of the podcast is to learn from 2001, 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, and hopefully help a few people avoid some mistakes. But what you said was very interesting, and the way people are buying. I'm watching projections and pro formas come out that are just a little bit ridiculous. And one thing that we do is we're buying in markets where there's not a huge amount of growth. Cleveland is very, very stable. The population hasn't changed much since the 1960s. It's stable. Has the number 2 hospital in the world, but it's fairly stable. El Paso, extremely stable, 4th safest city in the US. And so I was looking over a pro forma that we put together for our El Paso deal, and one of our partners said, I just don't know if I like this deal. I'd rather be in Phoenix, where the growth is ridiculous and the pro formas look really, really good. And I said, okay, well, let's just let's change your pro forma in Phoenix and let's see what happens if the market crashes, and what happened last time in Phoenix when the market crashed.
Right.
And that was interesting to take his pro forma and do a worst case scenario, because all of his return was based on not consistent cash flow,
Bliss.
but these giant equity increases, these giant
Yeah.
values going up. And ours is more based on, well, if value goes up, great. We just want
That's icing on the cake.
stable cash flow is what we want. And so it's interesting how even, I mean, this guy is invested in a lot of units. He even let himself get caught in chasing some yields. And he came back down to earth and kind of just blinked and looked at me and said, "Holy crap. Yeah. I thank you for pointing that out." And so that's what we do.
That's really good, because you want to look at what's comparative. Again, you can look at the public markets and see what high yield is paying. You can see what REITs are paying. So regardless of what asset class we're talking about, you do need to do what is best case, worst case, and reasonable expectations. In 1999, I actually had a client upset with us because our tech fund was only up 100% and his buddies was up 140%.
Oh, wow.
So, and then March of 2000 was the great meltdown of the .com era.
Right.
And so we had, even back then, as young as I was, we saw that you just couldn't keep up this pace. And we were trying to be reasonable. But what happens, and I find this a lot, is if an asset starts to get too big in a person's portfolio and it's too much of their wealth, they start taking it out at night and petting it and looking at the values and how sweet and how this has changed their life. And they go through these unreasonable emotional attachments to this dollar amount, and then they can't part with it.
Right.
Because so that's the pragmatic versus emotional. And so right now, we have to look at, while this market is being fueled by the Great Migration, lending is in line. We don't have the 16 loans to one person that didn't have a job like in 2006. So, but there's a different fuel, and prices can only go up so much more until people just stop buying. Right. So I really like your point you brought up about when you're looking at a pro forma, when you're looking at a stock projection, when you're looking at anything, if you're taking the best of the times and then someone's trying to project that forward for you 3, 5, 10, 15 years, run from them.
Yeah.
Run from them.
Please.
Because it's a business cycle is really 3 to 5 years. And when we talk about the markets, we've even got more short-term, about 6 to 18 months, but you want to own something 5 to 10 years. But volatility can show up in a way that you need to be very careful, have dry powder, cash is king, and be liquid.
Yeah.
So right now is the time to, how much do you need before you start taking money off the table? That's a personal discipline that you have to answer that question, or you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think the big problem now is it's so easy to raise money. That is so hard to be disciplined. I mean, if I threw out a pro forma like some of these people throw out, they're funding $10 and $20 million projects in a week because their pro forma looks amazing. And so the temptation for a lot of these people like you and I who work with investors is it's pretty easy to raise money right now. And yeah, when do you just decide as a fiduciary, you know what, it's time to maybe sit back a little and be conservative and avoid the temptation of jumping in with, I think is it Warren Buffett that said, when everyone else is excited, fearful, be scared,
Yeah, he says it. I love it. Is when everyone else is greedy, be fearful. When everyone else is fearful, be greedy.
Right.
And it's the contrarian, right? Because the masses historically are never right. They're just not. And so when my elevator repairman in 1999 was telling me about his .com portfolio that he was day trading, reminded me when I heard my irrigation installer telling me about the 4 spec houses he was doing down the street in
Oh, geez.
2006, right?
Yeah.
That's that Warren Buffett. And so wealth is something you amass over time. If you get it in the short term, or if you were lucky on something, just count it for what it is. You were lucky, you caught the cycle right. Your son talked you into Bitcoin at 5 cents a Bitcoin and you sold it at 65. That's fine, right?
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about. And as a fiduciary, I have to put my client's best interest above my own. But the truth is, I grew up to Zig Ziglar, John Maxwell, and Larry Burkett. And Zig Ziglar had a saying: "If I can help everyone around," I'm paraphrasing.
I love
this
it.
is my if I can help everyone around me achieve their dreams and goals, I don't have to worry about mine.
Right.
And then John Maxwell taught me the fundamentals of values and leadership, and Larry Burkett taught me biblical financial principles. And so, if you can look at what you're trying to achieve and then help others. So a fiduciary makes sense for me, because
Right.
I get to put your interest or my client's interest above my own.
Right.
So sometimes I have to pull back on the reins, take them a little more conservative. They're a little too aggressive. There's like everything is, and then some I have to kind of encourage.
Right.
No, you need to be a little more growth minded, because you don't have you need a little more growth and income to sustain your life. So I get to play that role. So it's very personal with every client.
No, I like that. And Zig Ziglar is one of my all-time favorites.
Right.
I have so many of his audiobooks I've listened to so many times. And I love I wish I could have I never got to see him live. I wish I could have seen him live. But if you help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want as well.
That's it.
And so what's interesting about our business is really that's all you have to do. If you have investors, you look at their goals, and when you look at a deal or an investment, it meets their criteria, or it helps them by default. In my position, I'm going to make money and I'm going to grow my portfolio as well. And that's, I think, the funnest thing about my business is if I want to win, they're going to win, or they have to win first.
That's right. Yeah.
And I like that. And that's actually why I got in the business, because as a real estate sales agent, the thing I didn't like is selling someone a 4-plex or a 20-plex or a 100-plex. And I was done. And there's always temptation from, realtors to sell stuff that's not a good deal to someone, because your benefit, your income isn't affected by what happens. You get a commission and then you're done, then you're out. That's right. And so what I wanted to be tied to the outcome, and I wanted to help provide a better outcome for my investors, and to also be able to control it. Because there's a lot of people that, they're surgeons. They don't have time to manage their real estate portfolio, and they were doing a poor job of it. So I really enjoy being able to be a part of the outcome and having my income and my portfolio tied to my investors, and being able to make sure that we've got everyone's best interest in mind.
Yeah, I was in right out of college. I started in life, health, and disability insurance, and then learned real quick. My client never wanted to see me coming with a check, because that meant something not good has happened to them. And I remember thinking, gosh, I'd like for them to want to see me coming with a check, right? And that's what got me into financial planning. And I started with Merrill Lynch in '92. And as you look at aligning yourself with others, it goes back again to values, principle. Probably number one is chemistry. I think we tell the people who are prospective, I talk with my financial advisors, prospective clients. I mean, first and foremost, we need to like each other.
Right.
I mean, who wants to do business with someone they don't like?
Right.
So that's a fun get to know each other part of the financial services industry that we enjoy.
No, I like that. And that was one of my 2018 epiphanies, is I have to like who I'm in business with. And we'll refuse money from investors that unfortunately they're just not fun to work with. And it'd be nice to have their money and their investments in our deals. But I think that's a really important side of the business that not a lot of people focus on is, everyone does better when you're aligned and when you have the same principles. So that's kind of one thing for us. But I do want to ask you about John Maxwell, because Zig Ziglar is one of my all-time favorites. John Maxwell as well. I mean, you've had some personal dealings and involvement in that organization and with him personally. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, John is the real deal. What you see is what you get.
Yep.
He loves to add value to someone every day. And I'm probably, there's so many of us that say we're his number one fan, number one cheerleader, and we love him and he loves you. It's just, he's an amazing man. But I've had the privilege of being part of his foundation, the John Maxwell Leadership Foundation, and the CEO of his organization, Mark Cole, who runs John Maxwell Companies, and now is buying John. John is retiring in corporate world, but he still has his clientele.
Okay.
And Mark is taking over the John Maxwell Companies. And then our foundation, we do country transformation. So we work with countries around the world where the president, Congress, and the military invite us in to build value-based leadership. Wow. And it's a gift to the country. And it is amazing, amazing. And it's John's passion, as it is all of ours. And then we also do community transformation around the world, and also have a Salt and Light program. But it is everything he writes in his books, he lives. And so, and it's a lot about what you and I are talking about today, was our values, valuing each other, human to human. Yeah. And then what are our personal values? And then how should they be emulated in our business? Right. And I'm working right now on a book, and it's a lot of language from the Maxwell organization, the 8 streams of cultural influence. Okay. And it's so many of us today are frustrated with culture. And what we don't realize is we have the culture we deserve. We've allowed culture to form under our feet. And so it's about, how do you influence culture? How do you use your influence to first clean up the stream you're in? So you and I are in the business stream. Right. And a lot of what we're talking about today is cleaning up our stream of influence, where we don't need to have a Russian negotiated deal. Everyone, the other person doesn't have to lose for me to win. Right. We can all win and make a lot of money in this country because of capitalism. So yeah, the John Maxwell Foundation, the John Maxwell Companies are second to none in value-based leadership, period.
I agree. And I think when you deal with people, you can feel a huge difference in the leadership and the overall feeling of the organization when, yes, maybe it's not John Maxwell, but they have John Maxwell-esque leadership fundamentals in the group. And so I'll go to these mastermind groups with, billion-dollar portfolio managers, multi-billion-dollar portfolio managers. And some of them are fantastic. They're really fun to sit down with, down to earth, like you, and just fantastic individuals. And some of them aren't. And I think what people find out very quickly is, where are your fundamentals? Where are your values? And they're probably still doing great, but it's very interesting to me when I meet with all these different people that are running these different companies and representatives of companies, how much nicer it is to deal with those individuals, and how much better they ultimately do when you're at these networking events or when they're trying to raise money and gain partners. It really, the word spreads fast about who you are as a person. Yeah, and it doesn't matter how good your business is or how good you are at business.
Something I learned, I tripped over it accidentally about 7 years ago when I was opening up my own firm. My wife and I sat down and talked, and we decided, it's time for me to at least semi-retire, because we had practiced what we preached over the years, and God had been gracious to us, and we really had a heart for different ministries and things around the world. It was a couple of years before I met John, and we we're telling people, hey, Scott's semi-retiring, Pamela's going to be retiring fully. She's a doctor. And it was the best marketing thing I ever did in my life. All of a sudden, everybody wanted to do business
Oh, wow.
with me. And so something must have happened. Either A, I stopped trying so hard and actually did start genuinely giving the person in front of me the time and the care that is natural of me. Something happened. And all of a sudden, our firm has set record. I mean, we're growing like gangbusters, and ministries are growing. We're around the world now helping people. And I get to meet John Maxwell, and now I serve in his foundation. And my wife's chairman of African New Life. And we're doing all this stuff, and we get to add value to people. And meanwhile, it seems like my businesses are growing faster than any time I tried hard.
That's awesome.
Maybe at 30, y'all should tell everybody you're semi-retiring as a market.
Seriously.
But something happened. And so I do think a part of it was we became attractive versus trying to get something happened that I think is very important to think about. We all want to grow, but are we paying attention to that person in front of us? Are we genuinely trying to add value to them? Or are we still trying to manipulate our way to a sale, to a close,
right.
to a deal, to a new client? And that happened for me. And again, stumbled over it. But it was the best thing I ever did professionally was semi-retiring.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, and I think maybe, I don't know, I'm assuming some of the pressure was lifted from your goals changed just slightly. I don't know what that would be, but
yeah, I think too, you do. Especially people that are around financial, we measure everything. So I do think that there was a sense of, I don't need to keep pacing at the pace I did, but all of a sudden it was a turbocharger came in. And so for me, as I look back, the fruit is the things we were talking about in this conversation. And had I known that 20 years earlier, who knows what could have been different. And so I think if I can add anything to everyone, is the things we've been saying, not only do they matter, but they work because people want to be loved, they want to be appreciated, and they want to be an authentic relationship. I know I do.
Yeah. I was about to say that people are the most important commodity, and the most important aspect of any business. And I was actually talking with a good friend the other day, complaining about one of my partners, and which you do at times. You get frustrated. Sometimes people drop the ball, and they said, well, why are they even on the team? And I'm like, well, A, they're an amazing person who I love, and people aren't perfect. Like, I'm not going to boot them from the company because they made a mistake. And this friend of mine, she said, man, you love people too much. I'm like, no, I think it's the opposite. I think when you do that, the company will grow no matter what. We'll figure whatever it is that we're, working on, that we're struggling with, we'll figure it out eventually. But I got to treat my partners best first and not come down on them and my employees. And that's been the biggest difference with my company. And the way I'm moving forward is really just asking how the person is and making that the priority. When stuff gets messed up, I mean, we're working on huge deals for us anyways, $27 million deal right now. Ball was dropped a little bit, but at the end of the day, this person has wife and kids and goes home every day. I don't want to ruin their day and make them feel terrible. And at the end of the day, we can figure out whatever it was. But that person is more important than the thing that we were working on.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to forgiveness and reconciliation, right? Is an amazing, powerful thing. And then through that, you can have restoration. And thank God for it, or my wife would have divorced me a long time ago, so much less.
I was going to say, no one's perfect, right? You got to give, give and receive and be ready to, hopefully give people a pass sometimes and also receive that same thing when you mess up. So
that's right. Yeah. One of my strongest relationships in my company is someone who left about 8 years ago with an associate that was trying to do bad things to me and our business. And she finally came to me after seeing he was, that person may have not have been truthful with her.
Yeah.
And we sat down and really needed to forgive each other, and we reconciled, and now we are so close.
That's awesome.
It's amazing. And so I so get what you're saying about when a partner or an associate or a team member messes up, to really give them that second chance, and because you're going to need it one day for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're getting short on time. I did want to ask you about Rwanda and kind of what you do in Africa, and just any other charity, because I think the happiest I'm ever in life is when I'm helping others. I love what I do. I love helping my kids, and I love serving others though. And I know when I'm not thinking about myself and how much money I want to make and the new car I want to buy, when I'm not thinking about those things and I'm thinking about how to improve others' lives, that's when I've always been the happiest. I served a Christian Mormon mission for my church in Peru for 2 years.
Fantastic.
All I thought about 6.5 days a week was preaching Jesus. That's all I did. How can I help this person understand what's in the Bible and accept Jesus? And I didn't read the newspaper. As a missionary, you are absolutely restricted from watching TV, reading newspaper, doing anything for yourself other than trying to bring people to the gospel. And there's a lot of different religions, but I think a lot of people's or Christianity's baseline is serving others. And I think that's really, really important to, even if you're not Christian, let's say you're atheist, it's still a life principle that when you aren't selfish and you're giving, you will be happier. So I'm really curious your take and to hear about your charities.
Yeah, we talk about faith a lot, because no faith is a faith. And so we all believe something. We all have some, let's just say we can all agree we're human. And I tell you what's going on in Rwanda. And I said earlier about forgiveness and reconciliation. 27 years ago was the genocide perpetrated on the Tutsi by the Hutu. And imagine having or being asked to forgive someone who murdered your family because they sought forgiveness. And that whole country has been rebuilt on forgiveness, reconciliation, and restoration. Wow. And Africa New Life is our ministry. We just had our 20th year birthday, I think yesterday, as a matter of fact. My wife is the chairperson, and we currently feed, clothe, care, and educate about 12,000 children a year. Wow. And those children move through the education system. We're in, I believe, 8 villages. We've planted churches, we dig wells, we grow gardens, and it's about the love of the person. And that ministry is a Christian ministry. So it's the two hands of the gospel, the compassionate acts of Jesus Christ, and his gospel saving message. And we were fortunate to be a part of building the second largest, most state-of-the-art private hospital that the ministry cares for. I think last year we saw over 50,000 people, had over 800 babies born in the hospital. Wow. And it is amazing to go to that country. And I think every one of us should, because we would learn a few things. One, Americans, we can't forgive each other for Facebook posts.
Yeah.
Right? So to learn where, if we're not careful, where tribalism will lead us. And you and I were talking earlier about voting in politics. Look, we all vote. We all should vote, and then cheer for the winner. We want our president and we want our Congress to do well. We want to do well as a country, and then campaign for your person the next time, vote for them, and then cheer for the winner. Right? I mean, and at the end of the day, we are countrymen. And so what we're doing in Rwanda is about our humanitarianism, and we can learn a lot from Rwanda. And they are now the second fastest growing economy on the continent of Africa. Wow. They are the 5th safest country in the world to walk down the street at night.
Wow.
And they were just recognized as the cleanest country on the planet.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So if
Interesting. I had no
anyone that
idea.
wants to go with us, you're more than welcome. If you'd like to go with Pamela and I to Rhonda, please let us know. I'm sure you can put up our website information.
Yeah, I will.
And then if you love value-based leadership, and if you would like to be a part of community or country transformation with the John Maxwell Foundation, also reach out. And listen, you want to be near John Maxwell, he's on our trips. I'll be with him in Paraguay and Brazil soon,
Wow.
and the Dominican Republic. And you want to get to know him and his heart, come with us to one of the countries we're in.
That sounds
We'd love to
amazing.
spend time with. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. One of my goals, probably for the past since we had my daughter 8 years ago, was to take my kids and do those type of service missions.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up very poor. My ex-wife grew up very wealthy, very different upbringings. And either way, we're both born in America and very, very privileged. Poor in America is very different than poor in another country.
Yes.
And so as my kids have grown, I've been very worried about how spoiled they are. You know, I do okay, and they've never wanted for anything. So I've really wanted to prepare them, and I don't know at what age, but take them to Peru.
Come with us to Guatemala. We're doing amazing. Guatemala. We're transforming there. But you're right. As Americans, and we're a product of our environment. We're very spoiled.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate. And we don't understand that even if I grew up very poor for America. Mm-hmm. And yet I never went a day without a meal. Now I didn't always get 3 meals but I could get a meal if I wanted. I always had a roof over my head. And there are people who don't have that in our country.
Oh yeah.
But poor in third world nations will align. Different. Yes, it is. It is. I could always go get water out of a water spigot, when I was a kid, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's very different. Well, man, this has been great, Scott. I really appreciate your time.
Yes, Sam.
I mean, I would love for people to reach out to you and what you guys are doing in other countries. Yes. I'll make sure I have all the links. Anything else you or your companies would like to plug, or anything we can help promote for you and your wife and what you guys are doing?
Well, I would say, again, if you don't have if you haven't found your purpose, right? And you're making money, you're doing well, married, have kids, or you want to be, whatever it is, but what breaks your heart? Mm-hmm. When you lay on the pillow at night in bed, other than maybe thinking about your checkbook or frustrated with the news, what breaks your heart, and align yourself with that and see how you can help others. But we'd love to have any of you join us, come with us to any of the countries, get involved. We have a broad range of choices. And again, regardless of your faith, we want to love you, add value to you, and bring you along for the ride.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'll be sending this out to all of our friends and investors, and I hope they reach out, because that's just like your motto says, wealth, but with a purpose. Yeah. And I think that's huge.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, it's not all about the dollars and cents. So
no, Scott, and I think lastly, I do need to, before you close, just say, remember, this has been educational. I'm very regulated. It's very important that you guys don't take anything specifically as an investment recommendation. Go meet with a trusted advisor. And if you don't have one, feel free to call our firm. We have advisors that'll meet with you and take you through. We have a refined process that we'll go through.
Yep. And references I've heard speak very highly of you and your firm. I'll make sure the website and contact info is in the show notes as well. But yeah, get advice, get educated. On the real estate side, we love helping people. But yeah, get a financial advisor. Scott and his group are fantastic, and that's why we had him on. But this has been great, Scott. Thank you so much. Thanks, I really appreciate the value you've added to our listeners.
Thank you, Sam. It's been my pleasure. Have a great day, buddy.